Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Less than 24 hours away from the Masters at Augusta National. We'll have plenty of coverage here for you throughout the SportsGrid network, so make sure you stay tuned as we preview it here on this show and others. Also, we'll get to the very latest on the NFL draft as Jacob Camenker joins us here on the show. We'll update the very latest odds, see who could go number 1, number 2, number 3, and so forth. In addition to that, we've got some great guests from Legal Sports Report. In addition, we break down everything happening in the world of media with our friend Simon Applebaum. But we start off with big news in Major League Baseball today. The top prospect in baseball not yet to hit the big leagues, unless you feel it's Paul Skeens, which you probably could. Jackson Holliday has gotten the call. He'll wear number 7. He'll be in the lineup for the Baltimore Orioles. He's just 20 years old. He was the top pick in the 2022 Major League Baseball draft. He hit .333 in the minors with 2 home runs, 9 runs driven in, 5 doubles, 12 walks. The entire minor league system for the Baltimore Orioles is loaded, but Holliday is the cream of the crop. He will play second base for them moving forward. Just 2 weeks in the minors. Apparently, he is ready to go. So congrats to him. NCAA men's and women's tournament. No surprise. Lots of people watching. The ratings are in, folks. 14.8 million viewers, according to Nielsen. That was not enough to surpass the 18.9 on the men's side in terms of where the women's were, because they were at 18.9 million watching South Carolina defeat Caitlin Clark in Iowa on Sunday afternoon on ABC and ESPN. But Monday's audience was a 4% increase in the men's side from last year between the Huskies and San Diego State over on CBS. Now, last night we finally got the official word that John Calipari indeed was going to leave Kentucky. The rumors were that he was going to sign a 5-year deal with Arkansas, and indeed they're going to make that official. Today at 6 o'clock Eastern, we just got the word. He will have that press conference at Bud Walton Arena. He had a great run at Kentucky, but it has now come to an end as he will be a member of the Hogs moving forward. Also good news in the NBA. For Atlanta Hawks guard Trae Young, he's nearing a return. He returned to practice and could, in fact, get back to the lineup tonight for the Hawks. They need him. There's several games under 500. They hold the final Eastern play-in game spot in the NBA playoffs. Now, as far as last night's NBA is concerned, kind of scary for Giannis as he suffered an Achilles injury. But for the time being, it looks like that, according to reports, his Achilles tendon is fully intact. I want to stress that. So it is being deemed a calf strain for the time being. He suffered it against the Boston Celtics in the third quarter. He went to the floor. His teammates helped carry him off. Now, remember, Giannis has had some significant injuries in the past, and he's recovered pretty quickly, by the way, to return for the Milwaukee Bucks. But for the time being, undergoing an MRI, a calf strain is usually about a week or two. So we'll see how quickly he can recover. It's possible Milwaukee may not have him for the first couple of games of the NBA playoffs. Okay, now let's get to the ongoing saga of Ja Morant, who, of course, is not playing due to injury this year. There's a judge that has ruled that Ja Morant fairly claiming self-defense in a lawsuit in Tennessee stemming from an incident where he punched a teenager, allegedly, back in July of 2022. He claimed self-defense and testified that he was trying to protect himself in the altercation. Now, naturally, his attorneys have not commented on the ruling, and the teenager's attorney has expressed, as you would imagine, disappointment in the judge's ruling. Now, as far as the NBA playoffs are concerned, Karl Anthony Towns is the big name that, of course, the Minnesota Timberwolves are expecting back. He's been cleared to participate in 5-on-5 drills, but is not expected to play immediately for the Minnesota Timberwolves. So they play the Nuggets tonight. He probably will not play. If there's more good news for the Wolves, since Karl Anthony Towns has gone down, their record is 11-5. And that includes the game last night where Anthony Edwards had a game to remember. 51 points for Anthony Edwards against the Washington Wizards. The final in that game, 130-121. They had a 21-point deficit erased, mostly in thanks to Edwards, who, of course, is looking for his superstar flowers as the NBA playoffs gets ready. And we'll see how far they end up going. Good luck to the Timberwolves in the playoffs. Now, no luck involved with Mike Trout, future Hall of Famer, is back. And he's having a big start to the season. He belted his 6th home run of the season last night It set a club record, becoming the fastest player in franchise history to reach 6 home runs in a season. Getting to the mark in just 11 games, he is tied for the major league lead in home runs. Trevor Story, meanwhile, unfortunately, another tough injury for him. Shoulder surgery, going to miss the entire season again. 6 months, the surgery to repair a fracture of his glenoid, that is the shoulder, which is scheduled for Friday. Their GM, Craig Breslow, reported, and they placed him on the injured list. He did start all 8 of the Red Sox games to begin the season, but that's not going to make them feel any better, signing him to a 6-year, $140 million deal back in 2022. Pitcher injuries remain a thing in Major League Baseball, and bigger than anybody could have potentially expected. They're going down player by player, and now another big one. Unfortunately, the Houston Astros placed their ace Framber Valdez on the 15-day injured list with elbow soreness, according to Joe Espada. Now, he's saying that he's hopeful that he's only going to miss a couple of starts. Espada was quoted as also saying that he didn't get any news on the ligament, just inflammation in the elbow. But, folks, this is how it starts. Hopefully it doesn't end poorly. Naturally, the Astros are also hoping to get Justin Verlander on the mound soon. Also, J.D. Martinez of the Mets had his debut delayed. He's got lower back tightness. Of course, he signed very late into spring training, a 1-year, $12 million deal with the New York Mets. All right, National Football League got a contract extension to tell you about. Reported this morning, the Jacksonville Jaguars have sent the bag over to Josh Allen's house, the defensive player. 5 years, $150 million, $88 million guaranteed, third highest paid defensive player behind only Nick Bosa and Chris Jones. They did not offer him a contract extension after the 2022 season. He had a great season last year, 17 and a half sacks for Josh Allen. As far as the game in Brazil, first one ever going to be played this season in the NFL, it's the Philadelphia Eagles and the Green Bay Packers, and folks are playing this game on Friday night, first ever game in Brazil. We've got news on the Masters. The first round featured groups have been announced. 10:30 a.m. tomorrow morning, John Rahm, Matt Fitzpatrick, and Nick Dunlap. 10:54 a.m., Clark Hovland and Cameron Smith. 1:24 p.m. tee time for Tiger Woods, Jason Day, and Max Homa. 2 o'clock p.m. for Dustin Johnson, Colin Morikawa, and Tommy Fleetwood. Meanwhile, Min-Woo Lee, his broken finger a couple of weeks ago was revealed. He still plans on playing in the Masters. Recovery will allow him to play. He's from Australia, but he said that he broke his finger and went to the doctor, thought he was okay. They came in and said, you broke it. But here's the good news. He's going to play in the Masters. How well he does still remains to be seen. All right, coming up next, the NFL draft is just a couple of weeks away. In fact, a lot of the focus on the sports calendar next week goes toward the draft. We'll get into it next. Our buddy Jacob Camenker will join us from Sporting News, talk about some of the options that you have over on FanDuel for picks 1, 2, and 3. And speaking of which, in just 3 minutes, we'll be back here on SportsGrid's NewsWire. Don't go away.
Is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. The intrigue has begun on the upcoming NFL draft. Jacob Camenker is covering it for Sporting News. He's kind enough to join us here on the show to add to some of the intrigue as the sports calendar. I mean, let's get honest here. Right after the Masters, it's pretty much go time for the NFL draft. We thought we would take a look at some of the odds over on FanDuel. Hey, Jacob, great to have you back here on NewsWire once again this week. Certainly after the 18th hole on Sunday at Augusta, I think Monday comes and it's nonstop draft talk pretty much here on out.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting prepared for. It always sneaks up on you, the NFL draft. It's 2 weeks away now. This year the calendar is a little weird. March Madness was later, going straight from March Madness into the Masters and then right into draft season. And like you said, there's a lot of intrigue this year. There's a lot of high-end quarterback prospects, and we don't know exactly where they're all going to go. We know Caleb Williams is going to go one. After that, there are still some questions. We think we know where guys are going, but things could change rapidly in these next 2 weeks. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the rumor mill develops around all these top-tier quarterbacks.
Yeah, I would agree. And FanDuel will tell you that the order is not set in the top three by any means. And so that's sort of unusual going into an NFL draft. In fact, if you think J.J. McCarthy is going to be part of the top three, you can make yourself some coin here. Now, look, the most obvious one, not the one that's guaranteed, but, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels 2, and Drake May 3. That's what the consensus is, but we've seen this change many times before. If your interest is Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, that one is plus 250. And then if McCarthy sneaks into the top three, you can get plus 650 there. So I wonder from your perspective, Jacob, look, we still have time on this. And I think it would probably be important to note for people who are planning on betting it, you should probably start paying attention to the odds, which way they are moving, 5 cents here, 10 cents there, because these people are very smart when they set them. They're not in the business of losing money.
Right. These lines can move rapidly with any sort of rumor or news. We've seen, especially with the buzz around J.J. McCarthy, his odds to be drafted in the top 5 have come crashing down at times. So he's looking really likely to be an early pick. I think among those lines, I still believe that it's going to be Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and then I think Drake May has the edge over J.J. McCarthy in New England. So I do like that plus 125 there. I know it's not the greatest number in the world, but I think if you believe that the Commanders are going to take Jaden Daniels and you're worried about, is Drake May going to be the guy? Is he going to have a surprise slide? I don't hate the idea of taking that plus 650 with J.J. McCarthy going third. It might not ultimately happen. Like I said, I still think May would have the edge over him in that case. But we've seen teams like have two quarterbacks closely ranked and all of a sudden decide with their last meeting, hey, we're going to go with the guy that we didn't really expect. We saw this, the Mac Jones draft. It seemed like Mac Jones might be the third pick for the 49ers, and they ended up going with Trey Lance. That was kind of a late swap in terms of odds. So I think the same thing could happen here with J.J. McCarthy. So I wouldn't rule that one out. I do think that the Commanders are taking Jaden Daniels, though. Maybe that will change in the next 2 weeks, but I think he's kind of established himself as the favorite to be number 2 right now.
Yeah. Now, the fun thing about the draft, too, is that you can bet on the team to take a guy like J.J. McCarthy as an example, and a trade up could happen from a potential team. And I think that's sort of the focus as to what we're going to look at here, where over on FanDuel, the Vikings are plus 115 to take him. Kirk Cousins now is in Atlanta. So naturally, that is the fit first and foremost. You have New England at 4-1, the Giants at 5-1, Washington 8.5-1. Denver certainly could use a quarterback too. And Raiders are the big wild card in every draft. Generally speaking, you never know what the Raiders are going to do. We'll get to them in a minute. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he ends up in Minnesota. Do you?
I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. I think that's probably the best fit for him. If he could go to Minnesota, have a chance to battle for the starting job against Sam Darnold, odds are that he would win it. Maybe not out of the gate, but pretty early in the season. Kevin O'Connell has developed quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins did really well under him. I could see J.J. McCarthy having similar success there. But I think if you're looking for value here, I think the Patriots at that plus 410 number, that's intriguing because if it's Drake May versus J.J. McCarthy, it's maybe a little more of a coin flip than people realize right now. And I think among the other teams, the Denver Broncos at 9-1, that intrigues me too. The question I have is whether they'll be able to kind of get the ammunition needed to trade up to get a quarterback after they've given up so much draft capital for the ill-fated Russell Wilson trade. But they desperately need a quarterback. They have Jarrett Stidham and Ben DiNucci on the roster right now. I could see Sean Payton saying, we need to go up and get this guy if he believes in him. And I think he might like the fact that McCarthy was a very good game manager in college. I think he might see a little bit of the success he had with Drew Brees there, but in a more athletic form. So I could see the Broncos doing it. I don't know if they have the ammunition to outbid the Vikings for it, but if you're looking for a longer shot, they're definitely one to consider.
All right, now let's move on to that wild card, as I mentioned, and that is the Las Vegas Raiders, where, Michael Penix Jr. sitting out there. He was amazing for several years in college, had a rough finish to his career, and now has had great workouts where teams are back in on him again, which is funny how that works. And boy, it just seems like this is the Raiders pick, right? And I understand why they're the favorites over on FanDuel, but what they're telling you here on this side, Jacob, is that this could be anybody. I mean, when you're getting a draft pick of a 4-1, take your pick here. Minnesota's in play. Denver's in play. The Giants certainly could go with Daniel Jones, have Penix sit back and wait and then play. I think Seattle's a great spot too, to be honest with you, 11-1 as well. I mean, sort of like a hometown area kid at 11-1. Saints at 11-1 as well.
Yeah, you mentioned Seattle. That one's especially intriguing because Ryan Grubb, I believe, is their new offensive coordinator. And he was the offensive coordinator at Washington these past 2 seasons when Penix enjoyed a lot of success. So he has a relationship with Michael Penix, and if they're picking at a certain point in the draft, say Penix, because of his injury history, lasts until the second day, Ryan Grubb might go to Mike McDonald and John Schneider and say, hey, we need to go get this guy because he has the potential needed to be a franchise quarterback. And yeah, we have Geno Smith, we have Sam Howell, but we can develop Penix and then have him compete with Howell once Smith, who's in his 30s, kind of has his career come closer to an end. So I like them as a long shot. I think the Raiders are still a good bet, though, because, I don't know, Daniel Jeremiah mocked Penix to the Raiders at 13, and he was one of the first guys to kind of put him that high in the draft. And maybe he won't go that high. Maybe he'll end up at the latter end of the first round. But I like the idea of him with the Raiders. I think that system would suit him well, and having receivers like Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers would really help his development.
Yep, Minshew there, so is Aiden O'Connell. Okay, the Broncos, as you mentioned, are pretty light in the quarterback area. I guess I'm a little surprised to see them this heavy of a favorite for a player that's not going in the first 3 picks. Because Jacob, again, this is Wild Wild West draft time here. But Denver's minus 130 over on FanDuel to take him. I find that odd. Giants are 7-1, Raiders 7.5 to 1, and then the same teams we just talked about: Minnesota, New Orleans, Seattle, all in play here. Boy, I would feel really uncomfortable laying minus 130 on a first-round pick that's not that as high as some of the others. What is your feeling here?
I wouldn't bet the Broncos at that juice. I think they could take Bo Nix. I think everyone's saying he's a good system fit for Peyton, and I don't disagree with that. But I just don't think it's a guarantee that they take him. I think that you're better off betting a team like the Giants and saying, hey, Bo Nix might not go as high as people think. If he ends up at the end of the first round, the Giants could trade back into the first round, get him and develop him behind Daniel Jones. But yeah, at minus 130, I have no interest in that, because if the Broncos go in a different direction at 12, they almost certainly won't get Bo Nix. So it just doesn't seem like a good value to me.
Agreed. All right, Jacob, great to see you. Thanks again for coming on NewsWire, and I'm sure we'll dive more into the draft next week. Thanks for coming on.
No problem, Craig. Take care. I'll talk to you soon.
Jacob Camenker, sportingnews.com. Coming up next, Sam McQuillan will be with us. Is there an update at this conference in California about the future of sports betting? Sam will join us and tell you that. We'll be right back. I mean, is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I mean, I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned, now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on Sports Grid. Can't wait to talk to Sam McQuillan about this little update we have here going on the possibility of sports betting coming to California in the near future, meaning like ever. But first, we'll touch on some other topics as well. Sam joins us now, courtesy, of course, of Legal Sports Report. Hey, Sam, great to have you back here on the show. How are you?
Hey, Craig, doing pretty good after that Yankees-Marlins win yesterday.
Oh, come on. You had to do that. It's not bad enough. Lost like every game this year. Gotta throw that at me here to start. All right.
Absolutely.
That's the way we're gonna go here. You know, Yankees have won a lot of World Series over the last 5, 10, 15 years. Anyway, Alabama, let's start there. Alabama is starting a potential sports betting bill, one of the states in the South, Sam, that we've been focused on, like Georgia. Alabama, seemingly a long shot just because of the nature of the legislation there. What's the update?
Yeah, House and Senate lawmakers in Alabama are going to have to come together sometime this session to ratify pretty big differences they have on this larger gambling package. There's going to be what's called a conference committee appointed to kind of negotiate and get them to find some middle ground on some pretty big changes that they seem to have a lot of differences about. The House already passed this really big gambling package that would essentially legalize 10 casinos in the state, create up to 10 sports betting apps, maybe even more, create a state lottery. It's one of the few states without a state lottery, allow pari-mutuel betting and historical horse racing, these big sweeping gaming changes in a state that really doesn't have many forms of legal gambling currently. Now, the Senate, by comparison, has been considering the same two bills, but actually gutted most of what they will probably end up passing to remove sports betting, allow fewer casinos, and just create the state lottery. They don't want a tribal monopoly on casinos or sports betting. So essentially, the governor is supportive of the bill, but if it is a stripped down version that the Senate wants, then she might not be as supportive as she was. What it comes down to, Craig, is the Senate doesn't think they have enough votes to pass all these changes at once. It's one of the reasons Alabama hasn't been one of the paramount states on legalizing sports betting. It's one of the reasons it's taken so long, is that it requires a constitutional amendment in Alabama. Any gaming changes do, which means you'd have to get a 60% vote threshold in both the House and the Senate, as opposed to just passing a bill. And they haven't had the votes for the last 5 years, and it doesn't look like the Senate has the votes this year. There is hope, though, that this conference committee could come together, maybe negotiate some differences. Maybe it comes down to giving tribes a little less, but that always runs into the barrier of how politically influential the tribes are in the state. So it's a really tough situation. You want maybe to give the Senate a little bit, but then you take away from the tribes and then you lose support, and the governor doesn't support it. So it's going to be an interesting down to the wire situation here. The conference committee hasn't been appointed yet. If the conference committee does come together and somehow figure out these differences, it would then go to the governor, who would have to sign off. And then that would allow it to go on the ballot before voters, either during a special election in September or during the general election in November. It's still being worked out which it would go to. It's another difference between the House and Senate, quite frankly. And if that gets passed, then the governor would enter a tribal gaming compact negotiation where she would try to ratify all these changes and create the framework for everything. So there's a lot of steps that would need to be done, but this is the biggest hurdle right now. And if they get over this hurdle, it looks good, but it's going to be tough to tell in the coming weeks. We'll have to see what else happens in Alabama with this conference committee.
Yeah, and the tribes, the focus also of sports betting moving forward in California with a conference going on. Interesting comments from a podcast. I know that you were following, Sam, here as far as the future is concerned, as to whether or not they get it. I guess that's what I'm alluding to. It's like anything can happen. Either they could push forward with this, they could completely push back with this forever. But this is, you could make the argument, Sam, the key state here in the United States without legalized sports betting that everyone is focused on to see if they eventually get this done.
Yeah, Craig, everyone is watching, waiting, hoping California does something. You don't want to hold your breath on it because it's been such a tough cookie to crack for the sports betting operators. They had that proposition, Prop 27 in 2022, which I think was the most expensive ballot proposition ever. They spent almost $400 million trying to promote this, and it failed miserably, getting less than 20% of the vote. And like you alluded to, that's because of the tribal influence in the state. They basically hold the keys to any gaming changes, anything that happens. We've seen the sportsbooks try to go around them. That didn't work. So now the sportsbooks are trying to work with them. FanDuel and DraftKings sponsoring a conference in California this week, which my colleague Mike Mazzio has done a great job covering, where tribal gaming leaders are speaking about the future of California sports betting. We had the CEO of FanDuel chime in about what she thinks is going to happen there. Some leaders saying that it might not be until 2026 where you even have in-person sports betting legalized in the state, and then until 2028 until you have online sports betting. So obviously that's a long time away, and the operators have really been pining away to get this done. FanDuel CEO Amy Howe was the first executive of any sportsbook to speak at the California Tribal Gaming Conference. She made her comments yesterday saying that, the last time they tried this, it was a spectacular fail. Going forward, they're committed to working with the tribes. FanDuel has hired a bunch of former California tribal executives to help mend this relationship with the tribes. It's essentially where the tribes have all this, they have all the leverage and all the negotiating power, and the sportsbooks are trying to figure out how to get to them. The tribes have been pretty vocal about, we've kind of like what FanDuel is doing. We like what DraftKings is doing. It seems like they're coming around and trying to understand us more. So they have some former executives that are working together there. And it hinges on what kind of deal they can cut, what the tribes can get, how much percentage of revenue, the tax rate that the books are going to be able to agree with, a reasonable rate. We've obviously seen what happened in New York, and it maybe seems like some of the books are regretting that now that they can't change the tax rate so easily. So it's a huge, huge state. It's the largest state in the U.S. market for the sports books. So they're not going to give up, and it seems like they're now trying these different routes. But it's not great news to hear 2026 or 2028 might be when that happens. But that could all change. We'll have to see, what these negotiations, what these relationships, mending fences looks like going forward. And I would say this is a good start for FanDuel and DraftKings this week, talking to the tribal gaming leaders.
Yeah, we'll have to start somewhere there to get the ball rolling, so to speak, in
Exactly.
California. Okay, new ball rolling in Washington, D.C. People who are betting on this app, Gambit DC, pretty quickly got to figure out a new place to bet, and they're going to have a new option, aren't they, Sam?
Yeah, it's really welcome news for bettors in Washington, D.C. I actually used to live there for a few years, and I can personally attest to how awful the experience was trying to use Gambit DC, which was the state's only online sports betting app. They have some other online sports betting apps, but you have to be like in an arena or in a casino to be able to use them. So they're really not, viable options if you want to bet from your couch or something like that. But yeah, FanDuel is going to be taking over the contract to operate the online sports betting license in DC, which should really turn around what's been a poor performance from the Interlot powered app, which quite frankly, it just had non-competitive odds. It was like you look at both sides of a game or a spread, it was like minus 150 on both sides. So it really wasn't good for bettors. A lot of the times the app would be glitchy, not working properly. It actually shut down during the Super Bowl a few years ago, which really enraged people in the district, and it wasn't working on the App Store. And then it also has this issue where there's so much federal land in DC that if you're moving in a car or just walking around, sometimes it'll have your location on a place that's you're not able to bet. So welcome news for people in DC, and welcome news for taxpayers as well. The app was promised to make $84 million in the past 4 years that it's been active, and it's only made $4 million. So FanDuel has come out and said we're going to guarantee $45 million in revenue over the course of the next 5 years of the deal. That's $5 million starting this year, and then $10 million every year after. So it seems like a no-brainer for them to move over to an operator as well respected as FanDuel. It's live in 22 states and largely has the most online market share in the U.S. It's pretty much the name you think of, them and DraftKings, when you think of sports betting. So good news for DC going forward here. You have until the end of the month if you're on Gambit to have all your bets honored, and you withdraw your money and make any outstanding bets by the 14th. So still some time to get out and then put that money into FanDuel, which I'm sure will have some pretty good sign up and promo offers in the district. And they'll enjoy being the only ones to be offering online sports betting in the district as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering why it took this long, Sam. It seems like, every other state, the major operators are there. Is BetMGM and some of these other operators not in DC? I thought that they were.
Yeah, they're in DC, but only through the arenas, which you have to operate in. So if you're at Nats Park, for example, you can use the BetMGM app, but outside of there, you can't. It's because DC has this weird exclusive contract thing where only one person or one operator can take a hold over it. So yeah, long overdue, and it's a very bureaucratic city, as I'm sure you know. So it's taken probably more time than it should have.
Understood. All right, Sam, great stuff as always. We'll check out your latest columns over at LegalSportsReport.com. Thanks again for coming on NewsWire. Appreciate it.
Yep, thanks a lot, Craig.
All right, coming up next, we will bring in Simon Applebaum from the podcast tomorrow will be televised for the very latest on ratings in the NCAA tournament, a preview of the Masters, and a shakeup over at ESPN. So stay with us here on the grid. Plenty more to come here on NewsWire. We're back after these quick messages here on SportsGrid. Is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. We bring in Simon Applebaum of the podcast Tomorrow Will Be Televised. Simon joins us weekly to go over the very latest in sports news as it pertains to media, some sports betting involved, of course, in that as well, as he shares his thoughts with us here. And Simon, great to have you back in the studio. Thanks again for coming on the show, and certainly off a historical NCAA tournament where ratings were up both on the men's and women's side.
Craig, it's great to be back with you. Before we get to the history of both the NCAA men and women's finales in basketball, a little bit of award news, which could make some history next month here in New York. The Sports Emmy nominations came out yesterday. Some very interesting quick takes. For the first time, not one but two Super Bowl telecasts will be up for the live event category. The CBS presentation and the Nickelodeon presentation. Both Ian Eagle and Noah Eagle are up for Emmys. Ian for Best Play-by-Play Host, along with Mike Breen for his work on the NBA on ABC and ESPN. Mike Tirico for Sunday Night Football on NBC and Peacock. Kevin Harlan for his work on football on both NBA basketball on TNT, football on CBS, and Joe Buck for Monday Night Football on CBS. So with Jim Nantz not being in the running, neither is Tony Romo, by the way, as color commentator, we may have a new winner in that category for the first time in quite a while. Also, other major alternative telecasts, the Peyton Eli Manning Monday Night Football show, the Toy Story special from Disney, the Big City Greens hockey special with animation done live. Both of them are up in technical categories. And that will be, by the way, Sports Emmys will be happening on May 21st in New York at Jazz Lincoln Center. And speaking of awards, tomorrow, this very network is up for a Synopsis Sports Media Award. That's going to be given out tomorrow morning at the Lighthouse in Chelsea Piers, where Law & Order, the shows are taped, I should say filmed. And the category is Best Use of a Free Ad-Supported Channel. So congratulations on the nomination to everybody here at SportsGrid, and good luck tomorrow in getting the award.
All right. We'll look forward to that, Simon. Thanks again for that. All right. So the big story over the weekend, naturally, was the NCAA tournament's Final Four. On Sunday, you had an epic performance from Caitlin Clark that fell short against South Carolina. And then on Monday, you had the men's NCAA tournament finale, which was a little bit anticlimactic, which is why I think the ratings don't show maybe a significant improvement, because UConn in the second half of that game really just ran away with it, Simon. But generally speaking, I think the broadcast crews and the networks have to be really thrilled with the way that this worked out for them.
I think so, and particularly for ABC and ESPN, the women's, it has to be spectacular. I thought both final games were covered very, very well. On the women's side, I thought Ryan Ruocco gave his best play-by-play performance, both in the Final Four and in the championship game on Sunday afternoon. The record below was wonderful. Holly Rowe, who's also up for a Sports Emmy Award again this year for sports reporting. She was tremendous with both during the game and with post-game interviews. I thought her interview with Dawn Staley afterward was fantastic. Aaliyah Boston, the former South Carolina player who's now playing the WNBA, she made a wonderful debut on the Final Four telecast. Her interview with Dawn Staley after their win on Friday night, I thought was marvelous. It was a really, really great telecast. As far as the men's show went, although it probably was disappointing, you got to remember the 14.3 million people watched it not just on TNT. It was across TBS, True TV, and Max. Nevertheless, Ian Eagle, Bill Raftery, and Grant Hill made a sensational debut as a triple team together. I thought Ian's commentary on the Final Four and his play-by-play on the final really ramped up. So I know a lot of people still remember Jim Nantz and all the years he did the call, but I thought the way he meshed in with Raftery and Hill was something spectacular. And the thing about Ian Eagle and both Ryan Ruocco is they didn't just do, the normal, here's how you call a big play. They really had a great time. They are both great wordsmiths. They really rose to the occasion. Just sensational work by both ESPN, ABC, and by CBS, and the True TV, TNT, etc.
All right, so now this new wrinkle, Simon, that I was not aware of until I read that we were going to be talking about it today, is a potential tournament that does not include the field of, who knows how, at this point, was it going to be 100? I don't know, Simon. But not the main NCAA tournament, but another one that could be potentially competing against the NIT tournament. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, they expanded the field of 64 to 68 to have those first four teams play. And then while the NCAA tournament is going on, there are two other tournaments. It's the NIT and the CBI. So what is this new tournament all about, Simon?
Well, it's a 16-team tournament. It is going to involve the major conferences like the Big East, Big 10, Big 12, etc. And I think that this, personal thought, I think, Craig, that this is a play to wipe out the NIT. A little bit of history. Back in the 1960s and 70s, the NIT was the postseason college basketball tournament, particularly because the coverage was given by CBS. Then when the NCAA's really got primetime play on NBC in the 70s with the great teams of Dick Enberg, Billy Packer, and Al McGuire, that's when things shifted. And ever since, when CBS got the coverage of the NCAA tournament and ESPN became the home of the NIT, it has been downhill ever since in the ratings. Although, this past NIT, the game with Indiana State last week and Seton Hall, the best championship rating for the viewership for the NIT in years, 1.8 million people. And that's despite the fact that ESPN never publicized the NIT. They never issue a press release. They maybe do a preview show after they talk about the NCAA tournament and their selection show. They don't do any publicity on air whatsoever. It's not presented on ESPN Radio or any other networks. So I think this is, given where things are at now, I really believe that Fox and ACG, who put this thing together, they are really trying to wipe out the NIT, and they're trying to become, by use of the conference involvement, the big conference involvement, become the next best college basketball tournament. We'll see if it happens sometime in next year.
All right, now let's move on to the big event coming up.
Craig, one more thing. Going back to the women's basketball tournament, there's already some fallout off the results of the women's basketball tournament. First of all, Ion Television, owned by Scripps, announced last night at a special event here in New York that if Caitlin Clark becomes the #1 pick in the WNBA draft next Monday on ESPN to the Indiana Fever, they will carry 8 or 9 Indiana Fever games with Clark on their Friday night doubleheaders, of the WNBA doubleheaders that will be starting up later next month. Also, we've learned that NBC Sports may, in their highlight coverage, 3-hour highlight coverage in prime time of the Summer Olympics in Paris, they may now focus it mostly on women's sports as opposed to a total sports picture. So already there is some positive fallout given what happened with the NCAA women's tournament, and particularly the championship game.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move on now to the big topic this week in sports, which is, of course, the Masters, which tees off tomorrow at Augusta, Simon, and certainly a lot of different options to be able to bet this event, to be able to watch this event. But we should probably start with the fact that, Simon, a lot of people in the industry think that the Masters app, the once-a-year app that you download and you can watch all of the Masters on there, is the single best sports app to watch an event in the United States. You hear this every year, how incredible it is. It's not the only way that you could watch it, but certainly I think it'll be the most downloaded app starting right now.
You're absolutely right, Craig. And the big story, I think, with the Masters this year is that more and more you're going to be able to watch at least the early part of each round on a mega content service. Starting, in fact, today. As soon as we go off the air, ESPN Plus is going to carry 3 hours of the Par 3 tournament, the mini tournament that runs the day before the first round of the Masters tomorrow. First 3 hours are going to be on ESPN Plus, then the rest goes on ESPN. And that's going to be the same idea with Thursday and Friday. ESPN Plus starts the coverage, then you catch the rest on ESPN. And the same thing also with Saturday and Sunday coverage on CBS. Paramount Plus is going to carry several different ways to watch the early round and, in fact, the full round. For example, the featured holes on Amen Corner, I believe it's 11, 12, 13. Also, specific teams or specific group pairings will be presented on Paramount Plus. And then, of course, you'll see the natural coverage, full coverage on CBS, 3 to 6 o'clock on Saturday, 2 o'clock to conclusion on Sunday. So you're going to see more and more mega content roles, Paramount Plus with CBS, then ESPN, of course, Thursday and Friday with ESPN. One prediction. If Tiger Woods, who goes out Thursday at 125 with Jason Day in that pairing, if he makes the cut, much less makes the past the first round, which has been an issue with him the last couple of major tournaments to try to get into. If he makes the cut, I promise you the viewership is going to skyrocket because everybody's going to wonder now that he's made the cut. Is he going to pull off maybe either a big top 10 finish or maybe even a big finish, his 6th Masters on Sunday?
And another story that comes out of this, Simon, is this is the first Masters without Sean McManus heading up CBS in a really long time. You know, obviously the tangible aspect of that, it's almost impossible to see, but it's a new era for CBS nonetheless.
It is, and it is the end of a great era. Sean McManus, for those who don't know, is Jim McKay's son, and he has done a spectacular job with CBS Sports. He has expanded their schedule. He's put soccer on the map with the Championship League, the All-Soccer Channel, Golazo. He's also done, I think, a great job in terms of the National Women's Soccer League, taking a bet on that league. He's now part of the four-network package, $225 million over 4 years. They'll continue to carry the championship game. And also, he's been willing to embrace coverage on Paramount Plus, live with CBS. He's embraced, for example, the college basketball NCAA tournament on other networks beside himself, to put full games on TNT, TBS, True TV, and now for the first time, Max. So you got to give Sean tremendous credit for not only expanding what CBS does on broadcast, but also willing to embrace the other platforms, cable, and in more recent years, smart TV sets, smart device, and multi-channel bundles. He has had a sensational career, and I hope that whatever he does, if he does retire for good, following Sunday when the green jacket is passed out, that he'll find a way to stay in TV sports in some way. He is a marvelous, marvelous person. One of the best.
All right, Simon, great stuff, as always. Thanks again for coming on the show. We'll catch up soon.
It's a pleasure, Craig. Take care. Enjoy the rest of the week. And good luck tomorrow with the Sports Media Awards from Synopsis tomorrow.
All right, thanks so much. That's Simon Applebaum. If you missed Coast to Coast yesterday, our big addition to SportsGrid, Smiley Kaufman, was on the show. Of course, former PGA Tour player, talked about what it's like to play at Augusta.
You're pulling in, you're getting your gear in there, and you walk into that place. What does it feel like, and how will it affect those guys who are doing it for the first time?
Well, I mean, Mike, if you're a first-timer there and you go down Magnolia Lane and especially the week of the tournament, it's your first time seeing it, you don't have a chance because there's just too much you got to play catch-up on. When I was a rookie, and I only played the Masters one time, but I did all my preparation in weeks before going on scouting trips there. So I felt super comfortable with my game. And when I got here this week, it was just, okay, what are the speeds of the greens? Has it gotten any faster? And I think a guy like Wyndham Clark and Ludwig Oberg, how you just mentioned that are rookies, they've already been on scouting trips. They know exactly what to expect with this golf course, similar to kind of how I was. And I'll never understand somebody that's a rookie and doesn't take advantage of the opportunities of getting here early, because there's so much to learn at Augusta National. There's just too many things that you can't figure out in Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday in practice rounds. So, and the trend really is Fuzzy Zauer. Fuzzy Zauer is the only rookie to ever win out there, and that's really the reason why. But if there was ever a year for it to happen, Wyndham Clark and Ludwig Oberg, I mean, these two guys are stone cold killers, man.
All right, we'll be back with more NewsWire here on SportsGrid with an update at the Masters for two players who may not finish the tournament and has nothing to do with their play. I'll tell you why next. Is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I mean, I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get them at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
He's blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. The Masters is less than 24 hours away, and I'm sure many of you who watch our network are probably placing some sort of bets in legal sports markets on some players to win the Masters. And I would tell you that if you're going to bet Scotty Scheffler or Sam Burns, here is your little disclaimer. They have said in their press conferences, and this is a little crazy here, but you understand both of their wives are pregnant and closing in on giving birth. And both players have said that if their wives go into labor, they're going to leave the Masters. Now, Burns' wife, Caroline, is due in 9 days. So this literally could happen at any time. So if you're following Sam Burns, just keep this in mind. Now, Scotty Scheffler, his wife, is due in 3 weeks. From experience, this certainly could happen early. I mean, that's not unreasonable to think that it couldn't happen this weekend, but just buyer beware on these players at the Masters this weekend. I mean, how would the sports books handle this, by the way, if this ended up happening, like, let's say after round 1 or round 2? I think they probably would do the right thing and give your money back, I would assume. But needless to say, just a nice little wrinkle of drama going in this weekend. More so, I think, for Burns than for Scotty Scheffler, of course, who's the favorite to win the Masters this coming week. All right, that'll do it for our show today. Thanks to Simon Applebaum of the podcast Tomorrow Will Be Televised, Sam McQuillan of Legal Sports Report, and Jacob Camenker of the Sporting News, our associate producer, Frank, and our producer, Michael Cohen. I'm Craig Mish. We've got the early line coming up next, followed by Pharrell Coast to Coast at 3 o'clock Eastern. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern. And, folks, we will have Masters updates throughout the day because many of the players will have teed off in the early morning at Augusta. So can't wait to talk to you about it then. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Keep it locked here to SportsGrid, and I'll see you tomorrow morning for our next edition of NewsWire. Have a great day.